How do you turn dreams into cinema? It's been 87 years since this scene from The Wizard of Oz enchanted audiences for the first time. At first glance, it looks like a simple transition, from grayscale to color, from reality to dreams. But why is it so significant? We could say it's because it's one of the first uses of Technicolor, or maybe the clever use of visual effects, where they used a double and a set painted grey while already shooting in color. But no, I think it's something else. This moment captures cinematic magic, and with it, the world of our dreams. Because after all, how do you portray something so ephemeral like a dream? Dreams are something we are all familiar with, yet know barely anything about. The unusual places we visit, the seemingly incoherent stories we see, the various people we meet. Still, there is something in this subjective, incomprehensible world that excites artists and audiences alike. If you think about it, filmmaking is very similar to dreaming. A 90-minute sequence of images and sounds, events following each other in a set order, from which the dreamer weaves a story. Many have tried to capture our dreams in film form. So how did they do it? What tools can filmmakers use to make the audience believe they are in a dream? And what are the different levels of dream depiction in film? If we go back to Oz, the separation of the two worlds is clear. These types of films tell the viewer clearly that they are in a dream, whether through entry and exit points, such as falling asleep and waking up, or through distinct narrative and visual cues.
Toto, I have a feeling we're not in Kansas anymore.
This is both the most common and easily recognizable way of depicting dreams. But there's another version of this, where dreams are even more clearly explained. These are films that choose dreams as their main theme and explore them in depth. Satoshi Kon's Paprika, which influenced Nolan's Inception, is a good example of this. Here, with the help of a device, anyone can enter the dreamer's mind, which leads to a terrorist using it for his own benefit. It not only shows the weirdness and infinite possibilities of our dreams, but also how dangerous it can be to influence someone's mind through them. Animation gives the filmmakers more flexibility. Through it, they have less limiting factors and their imagination can run wild. Inception explores similar themes, but instead of expanding the bounds of animation with a mystery setting, it creates a sci-fi framework, diving into a more logical approach, where action and suspense take over. But whenever films handle dreams, the bounds between reality and dream blur in the end, leaving us wondering. So what about the films where we don't even know if we're in a dream? This is my favorite type of dream depiction, and also the most difficult to grasp. It relates to oniric film theory, the idea that film itself resembles dreams, and therefore film viewing is a state between being awake and falling asleep. Ian David says, "Cinema, like dreaming, is substantially composed of image and emotion. Perhaps it's no coincidence that the dream cycle lasts for 90 minutes, and so does a feature film. Is it any wonder that we so quickly understood cinema without needing to learn the language?" Have you ever watched a movie and thought there's something unusual about its atmosphere? As Holly Emerson Byrne writes, when we are in a dream, things feel somewhat normal for the most part. However, there's often something that just feels a little off or uncanny that we cannot quite put our finger on. Think of the filmography of David Lynch. His narratives are full of confusing elements, visions, and characters. There are countless scenes and lines of dialogue that feel surreal and nightmarish.
I love abstractions, and the power of cinema to tell abstractions is huge.
Lynch was a director who relied heavily on intuition and ideas coming from his unconscious mind.
I sat down in a chair, waiting, and as I was sitting there, a dream came that I had the night before. I remember this dream, and this dream held these things, and I wrote down these things, and those things solved this problem that I'd been working on, and the script got finished.
So his work is often described as dreamy, because he's drawing ideas from the same place we all do at night. There are many examples in his filmography we could discuss, but let's take a look at Mulholland Drive, where Lynch dives into dreams and nightmares.
I had a dream about this place.
Oh boy.
Here, the main characters, and even their identities, are constantly questioned and blurred.
What's your name?
From the very start, Lynch uses long dissolves, making the audience feel as if their consciousness is drifting, like we are just about to fall asleep. And the visuals, which are stylized with vibrant colors and unusual lighting, support this feeling.
Come on, it'll be just like in the movies. We'll pretend to be someone else.
His images are always in service of the ideas in his mind. They don't have to follow the restrictions of reality or its logic.
Intuition is the intellect and emotions swimming together. It's like a knowingness. And logic means it feels correct. It's logical, but there's degrees of it.
In movies, logic only has to follow the logic of its own world. And these worlds come from the mind of the dreamer. In this case, David Lynch. He introduces characters that sometimes appear only once or twice, and the audience can't help but feel spooked by their presence. These unexplained and unusual beings remind us of the phantoms of our own dream worlds. As he said, "I like to make films because I like to go into another world. I like to get lost in another world. And film to me is a magical medium that makes you dream, allows you to dream in the dark. It's just a fantastic thing to get lost inside the world of a film." For Lynch, films are dream worlds born from the unconscious. But what happens when the dream doesn't replace reality, only distorts it? Eyes Wide Shut is Stanley Kubrick's final film, based on the Austrian novella Traumnovelle by Arthur Schnitzler. It explores the sexual fantasies and desires of a couple. As you might have noticed, most dreams dive into the psyche of their characters. In Oz, Dorothy is afraid of her neighbor, doesn't find her place in the world, and sees the shortcomings of her farm worker friends. In Mulholland Drive, it's the young actress's struggle with fame that leads to her nightmares. And here, we dive into Freud's idea of dreams as the fulfillment of our desires. In both the original story and the film, dream and reality can never be clearly distinguished. So let's take a look at Eyes Wide Shut as if it were almost entirely a dream. Harford and his wife go to a party where they barely know anyone. It's a mess of blurred faces, but then Nightingale appears, a friend from long ago. Isn't it common to meet people from your past in your dreams? Someone you never think about suddenly appears one night, for no clear reason. What also supports this feeling is the spaces themselves, like the New York streets Kubrick built in a studio just for the film. However detailed and realistic they are, there is still this uncanny feeling when Tom Cruise walks through the neighborhood. It feels like someone's idea of New York, as if his mind rebuilt it, but something is still off. And then there's the editing. Kubrick takes big leaps from one scene to the next. We are at a party, then back in their bedroom, and within minutes the next day is rushed through, until the big fight, where Alice's secret desires are revealed.
He glanced at me as he walked past, just a glance. I was ready to give up everything.
You could say gaps between scenes and locations are normal in movies. But here what matters isn't the gap itself, it's what follows each one. The way the story evolves begins to resemble dream logic. The dreamer hears entirely new information, rooted in his fear of his wife's loyalty, and from that, several episodes of his own sexual desires begin to sprout. Here, events follow a pattern similar to how our mind moves from one thought to the next. During his journey, Harford begins to circle one question. Is Alice's infidelity something that could justify his own? Does he have similar desires? Just after Alice confesses her fantasy about the sailor, Harford is thrown into a series of similar situations.
Hello.
The argument is interrupted, he has to leave, and an old friend's daughter confesses her love to him.
I don't think we've had a single conversation about anything except your father.
I love you.
Harford's mind is testing ideas. Could he cheat on his wife if the opportunity arose? The women who appear in these episodes feel less like real people and more like fragments of his own mind. They always approach him. As the dreamer, he's mostly a witness, almost a victim of his unconscious. As Ian David wrote in his study on the topic, Freud reported extensively that most dreamers have a very strong sense of the events in their oniric travels involving them. They are present to observe and register an effective response. Often they feel almost passive in their presence at the scene, impotent to act, but these events are happening to them. When Harford visits the prostitute's apartment and accepts her services, it's as if his guilty conscience suddenly shuts the fantasy down. A phone call from Alice interrupts the scenario.
Hello?
And the dream collapses.
Hi.
We're back on the street, once again jumping from one thought to the next. As his odyssey continues, everything begins to unravel, and his fantasies grow more obscure and scary. The deeper he moves into the core of his fears and desires, the more paranoid he becomes. First, the fear of being cheated on by Alice, then the fear of being exposed at the ball, the fear of being infected when he learns the prostitute he met is HIV positive, then a fear for his own safety, and finally, after the journey ends, he returns to his deepest fear, losing Alice. But now he recognizes something. Out of all his fears and desires, this is the strongest one, a nightmare he never wants to become reality.
Oh, I just had such a horrible dream.
There are many ways to visually represent dreams, but one of the most unique and innovative approaches comes from the Chinese director Bi Gan in his 2018 film Long Day's Journey into Night. The film's first half is filled with sudden jumps between past and present. Long takes of painterly images dance with symbols and homages to the likes of Fellini or Tarkovsky. And all of it is poetically narrated over by the protagonist in a way that recalls Wong Kar-wai's films.
那天晚饭的时候，我发现的妆化的样子和我妈照片上特别像。
From the very start, the movie creates a drifting, dreamlike sensation. Then, Bi Gan takes you even further. At the halfway mark of the film, around 1 hour in, the protagonist sits down in a movie theater. And only then, so late into the picture, the title card finally appears, almost as if signaling that this is where the real film begins. We step through the threshold and enter a dream. With this, the director also connects the oniric idea Lynch talked about, where the viewer in the dark becomes the dreamer. What follows is a nearly 1 hour long take that carries us through an expansive journey that feels uncannily like a dream. From interiors to bike rides, from walking through rooms to literally floating above the ground. Through a ping pong match, a game of pool, and finally, a busy nighttime festival. It's one of the most mesmerizing and technically impressive sequences in contemporary cinema. And that's not all. In his theatrical release, this entire second half was presented in 3D. Bi Gan doesn't just build an uncanny dreamscape through structure and imagery, he also uses a technology that's almost disappeared from modern filmmaking. The result is something inclusive and rare. A sequence that doesn't just depict a dream, but makes us feel like we are inside one. After the first two categories, the explicit and the ambiguous dream depictions, let's talk about the third one. The films I talked about before were already diving into the minds of their characters. But here, instead of focusing on atmosphere and dreamlike visual qualities, the narrative revolves around the characters' thoughts, memories, and inner life. With these films, it's not always a dream we're seeing, but we're still entering the mind of the protagonist, or sometimes the filmmaker themselves. 8.5 by Federico Fellini is a perfect example of this. It's a journey through his thoughts and ideas, his struggles as a filmmaker, his memories of childhood, and reflections on his past lovers. Throughout the film, Fellini includes surreal imagery where scenes don't feel like part of a fully developed world, but like isolated locations and scenarios, as if nothing exists beyond their boundaries. like a party, a memory, or a festival. Filmmaking and dreams connect on many levels, so it's no surprise that so many directors depict these self-reflective elements in their work. The Japanese film Pastoral, To Die in the Country, serves as a collection of stylized memories from the perspective of a protagonist who is making a film about his own life. This creates a special scenario where he steps into his own memories, warping them into new events, meeting his younger self and confronting repressed feelings and traumas. Another writer-director who almost exclusively explores similar ideas is Charlie Kaufman. His 2008 film Synecdoche, New York, much like Pastoral, also follows a director who creates a work about his own life. But even before we fully realize what is happening, Kaufman captures the uncanny nature of dreams through small, unsettling details. The editing, for lack of a better word, is chaotic. There are jump cuts for seemingly no reason. We move from one place to another, then to yet another, sometimes within seconds. It's similar to the logic I mentioned with Eyes Wide Shut, but on a much smaller, more fragmented level. Just like in a dream, where we jump from one event to the next, and our mind fills in the gaps. In one sequence, we move from a theater to a toilet, to his bed, and then to a therapy room, in less than a minute. There are also surreal elements that no one in the film seems to notice. A house that is always on fire, gibberish coming through a fax machine, strange commercials on TV featuring the protagonist himself, and many more. I also want to mention Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, which Kaufman wrote and was directed by Michel Gondry. While it doesn't take place inside dreams, the story follows Joel as doctors erase his memories while he sleeps, and we witness his desperate attempt to hold on to them as memories merge, warp, or disappear entirely. Much like the earlier examples, before we fully understand what's happening, the film plants subtle signals that something isn't quite right. Just like many others, it begins in a bed. There are jump cuts, continuity errors, and visual inconsistencies that prepare us for a shift. It's a beautiful exploration of the inner workings of the human mind through cinematic language. The confusion Joel feels is the same confusion we feel. As the filmmakers play tricks on our perception, they pull us into his inner world. And just like dreams, films become reflections of ourselves, ways to understand our anxieties, our desires, and our emotions. And when the film ends, we are left with the same question the dreamer often asks: did we truly understand what we just experienced? I often ask myself if I understood the film I just watched. And over the years I realized that enjoyment doesn't come from understanding. A film, like a poem, a painting, or music, can evoke a feeling or touch you in many ways, without leaving you with clarity. Just like dreams do. Nowadays, we all look for answers. What did it all mean? But there doesn't always have to be one answer. When you sit in the dark of a movie theater, you are alone, and what you feel and what you see is your own. This is what cinema is to me. Dorothy stepping out of the grayscale mundanity of her everyday life, free from all the troubles, to a colorful and magical place where dreams come alive. Films create a world where anything can become reality, whether it's mystery, excitement, or a meandering journey through the uncanny creations of our minds. And when the film ends and the lights come on, you've woken up. But unlike dreams, the magic of cinema is that we don't forget the journey after waking. We can always come back to dream it once more.